Hello all, welcome to this session on What's New in Azure Monitor. I am Rahul Bagaria, and I have with me Yevgeny Tarnowski from the Azure Monitor team, and we'll take you through the exploration of Azure Monitor today. Let's start talking about some of the big themes in Azure Monitor. The first thing we'll talk about are some of the biggest themes in Azure Monitor that we are investing in. We are providing native out-of-the-box monitoring support for all of your Azure resources, as well as hybrid servers and Kubernetes clusters through Azure Arc. What that means is you should be able to easily onboard all your resources and collect the relevant metrics and logs for a consistent and complete experience across your monitoring scenarios. We want to ensure that Azure Monitor supports all of your enterprise readiness requirements across security, compliance, and even management at scale. We even provide a full stack diagnostics experience with rich out-of-the-box insights for many of your resources, including an end-to-end distributed tracing experience with a rich and powerful centralized log analytics platform that you can use for all sorts of queries and correlations. Azure Monitor also supports an open ecosystem. So if you're writing any applications in open source languages like Python, Java, Node, etc., you can easily use application insights for them. If you have any DevOps or IT tools and processes in your organization, you can connect them with Azure Monitor very easily. Also, if you have any third-party monitoring or analytics solution that you're already using, they can very well connect with Azure Monitor to ingest in the platform metrics and logs. So let's start looking at some of the recent announcements and new capabilities in Azure Monitor that you can start taking advantage of. The first pillar we are going to look at today are some of the out-of-the-box insights that Azure Monitor is providing. We'll start looking at network monitoring. We recently announced a preview of a unified network monitoring capability in Azure Monitor, and we are kind of adding some new capabilities there. So if you go to the Network Insights blade, you'll notice that there is a new view around traffic analytics, as well as a new diagnostics toolkit experience that can help you tackle some of the popular network diagnostics issues like packet capture for VPN and so on. These are in addition to the existing network health or connectivity monitoring capabilities within Network Insights. As part of connectivity monitoring, there are a couple of additions there. So we have added in express route and performance monitoring support to kind of complete that unified monitoring capability for all of your hybrid networking resources. For container monitoring, we recently announced a bunch of recommended metric alerts out of the box with the default thresholds that you can start enabling for your AKS clusters right now. If you're using any kube state metrics or network policy metrics, we now support that natively. And if your AKS clusters are running Windows servers, you can now collect Windows container logs within the same experience. Other Azure resources, we recently announced a preview of Azure Monitor for SAP solutions and also announcing GA of Azure Monitor for your Key Vault and Azure Cache for Redis resources. So these are workbooks-based insights, which helps you kind of visualize all of your metrics and logs and give you like ideas around your resource health, performance, diagnostics, and so on. Even if you have any virtual desktop resources like Windows Virtual Desktop on Azure, you can start using log analytics for like queries or troubleshooting and so on. So that was our first pillar. The second area we'll look at is alerting and some sorts of automation and workflows that you can enable in your environment. Now, Azure Monitor provides a bunch of different connectors and integrations natively. One of them is a logs connector. We recently announced a GA for this capability where you can start ingesting your log analytics queries and results within Logic apps or Power Automate actions and create your own customized workflows and automation scripts. Things like scheduled queries or running some actions like getting a notification on your Teams channel or an Outlook email or so on. There is a new preview of an ITSM connector for BMC Helix with a secure export capability from Azure Alerts as well. If you have been using log-based alerts in Azure Monitor, there is a new upgraded experience. Now, in addition to creating these log-based alerts directly from the workspace, now you can go to the resource itself and use those resource-centric logs to create alerts from that place. To go along with that, there is a new API and a portal experience that can help you guide in creating those optimized queries or filtering out certain dimensions and so on. For metric alerts as well, there are a bunch of granular improvements. You can start creating alert rules on custom metrics even before they are emitted. Or if you're creating a single alert rule, as you can see in the screenshot, you can add in multiple and conditions, all of which need to be satisfied for that alert rule to trigger. You can even start excluding dimension values going forwards. So that was the alerting area. Now let's look at how would you onboard Azure Monitor at scale across all of your different resources. We recently announced a new Azure Monitor agent with a set of data collection rules that can help you do that very easily. So this new agent is essentially a replacement of the existing log analytics agent, diagnostics extension, or telegraph agent that you might already be using. And these data collection rules are essentially a set of centralized rules that you can use to configure data collection for multiple VMs or servers from one single place. If you have any Linux server, the new experience allows you to multi-home to different workspaces. Or let's say you have a Windows server, you can now start using XPath queries for event filtering right from the get-go. Talking about hybrid support, Azure Arc is the capability that kind of gives you that unified management plane for all of your non-Azure servers or Kubernetes clusters, giving you that unified experience with which you can use Azure Monitor for these resources, just like they were any Azure resource. So if you go to, let's say, container monitoring, you can see both your AKS clusters as well as Arc-enabled clusters in that same single experience and kind of start correlating and diagnosing your hybrid environment in one single place. Our last pillar for today is around enterprise readiness support for all of your advanced and like business scenarios. There is a new preview of dedicated clusters available for log analytics workspaces. Now, you could already use capacity reservation for a single log analytics workspace to take advantage of discounted pricing tiers. Now, with dedicated clusters, you can reserve capacity across multiple workspaces, making it easy to manage your costs overall. If you want to take advantage of data encryption at rest, you can use that with dedicated clusters. Just specify your own custom managed keys and start doing that. Or if you want further data access control as you are engaging, let's say, with Microsoft support teams, you can use the lockbox capability and just prevent access to your data from Microsoft engineers. If you're using application insights for your application monitoring needs, there is a new GA for a workspace-based experience where we have really deeply integrated application monitoring with log analytics to be that one single experience. So now you have one workspace where you can store both your application logs as well as platform and infrastructure logs and just start querying everything from that one single experience. In addition to this, it basically gives you all the advantages that you are getting from log analytics for enterprise readiness, things like capacity reservation, CMK, private link support, even continuous export to a storage or event hub via diagnostic settings. And last but not the least, there is a capability around query auditing that's now additionally available. So when you're managing your log analytics workspaces, you can start collecting diagnostic logs on how those workspaces are being operated. So if you want to do any audit checks or just have a check on how those workspaces are being used, that's a great capability that your central IT teams or organizations can start taking advantage of. Okay, so now it's time for a demo. I'll invite Evgeny to kind of take you through whatever we talked about and see how that looks in action.
Thanks, Rahul. So today I want to show you some of these great new capabilities in action. To do that, I'll get us started over here in the Azure portal, and we'll go to the Monitor section, which is where a lot of these features are found. So let's click on Monitor, and the Insight section is really where all of your curated experiences live, from VMs to containers to applications, etc., etc. I'll go ahead and click on Insights Hub just to show you some of these other rich experiences. And these are just the ones here that I actually have provisioned in my subscriptions. So you'll see things here like Key Vault, which Rahul talked about. And of course, there's many, many other services for which we offer this. Today, though, we're going to look at containers. So let's start by clicking Containers. We'll go to our monitored clusters. And under monitored clusters, the very first thing that will jump out at me is this environment dropdown. And if I press this dropdown, you'll see that I also have support not just for clusters running in Azure itself through the Azure Kubernetes service offering, but also through Azure Stack, through ones running completely outside of Azure on your own custom hardware, as well as the ability to look at all of them, which let's do that, zoom out. And you'll notice one other thing pop up over here, which is Azure Arc. For those of you who are not familiar, Azure Arc is a way for you to essentially pull in your infrastructure that lives outside of Azure, but manage it through the very same Azure control plane, both API as well as obviously the portal that you do for native Azure resources. And so in this case, I'm running this Cape Town and San Francisco warehouse cluster off premises, but because of Arc, it's showing up within my portal, and the experience is exactly identical once I actually start trying to monitor it. But for the purposes of this demo today, I'm actually going to pick one of these other clusters here. I know that we are actually over here on this critical cluster, which is having issues. So right away, I can see that there are some problems that I want to investigate. So let's go ahead and click through and actually go a little bit deeper into the investigation. I can see right away some basic statistics about my cluster. I'll actually flip over to the containers view. I can also look at my nodes, controllers, deployments, a few other things. But let's take a look at containers. And we'll see right away that two of these containers, Minecraft, are in a warning state. First of all, I don't know why Minecraft is running on production-grade infrastructure, so we'll have to go and look at that later. But let's take a look at the actual problems that are happening here. One of the things that jumps out at me immediately is, aside from the fact that the CPU usage has spiked way up, we're having all sorts of restarts on these particular containers. And you'll also notice that the trend here is in the red. So the very first thing I want to do before I forget is make sure I set up some alerts on top of this particular condition where a container is restarting a whole bunch, so that if anything ever happens again, such as this, we actually are aware of it. So notice this new button over here I have called Recommended Alerts. If I press this, what we'll see here in a second is a list of very common scenarios that us working with a lot of customers who are using AKS in this case have decided that to curate and to present to you as things that often you'll want to monitor. And you'll have the ability to come in here and enable each one of these, assign an action group, and then actually be able to push through and get the alerts in just a few clicks over here, as opposed to having to think about, well, what is it that I need to monitor? This is a great starting list. And sure enough, over here we have restarting container count as one of the suggested things that I should be monitoring. And so I could click enable over here and do that. I'm going to skip that for now in the interest of time, but it's a very simple experience. And we'll come back to alerts in just a few more minutes here and show you some additional capabilities. Now, if I actually wanted to see, for example, why these restarts are happening, let's say that this wasn't some errant container that I'll need to go in and investigate. Let's say that this was an actual valid container that I wanted running on this cluster. How do I actually see why these restarts are happening? Well, I could say view live data here, and this would actually stream data right into my browser from your console output, be it standard out, standard error, etc. Or I can go and I can press view and analytics, and this takes me into log analytics, which is, of course, our central experience to manage all of your logs and to query all of the data that you're collecting across anything in Azure Monitor. So right away, I'm provided with this great query here that I can use as a starting point. It is limiting me, filtering me to just the one container that I was selected on, which normally is great. But in this case, I just want to see everything from Minecraft. So the great thing about log analytics is even though we provide you this simple query to start with, I can come in here and I can very easily modify this to do what I needed to do. So in this case, I want to look at just Minecraft. So I can say something like where. Notice IntelliSense is still there for you. And I'll say something like image is equal to Minecraft server. So let's run that. And now we'll get all of the logs, in this case, over the time range we had set previously that have to do with Minecraft. And I could actually go through it and read through these logs from the latest to the earliest to see if I can deduce what's going on. So you can see the raw logs now getting logged. This is a lot, of course, and Log Analytics provides you all sorts of capabilities to be able to filter this down further. But for now, let's say that we'll work with our engineering team based off of these logs and figure out exactly what the root cause here is. A few other things I want to show you in Log Analytics since we're here. The first one, and let's sort this by category rather than solutions, is that we now have this applications category. Rahul mentioned this briefly in the introduction there, but Application Insights, which is our APM offering, our application performance management offering, now natively sends data to Log Analytics. What this means for you is that you can analyze that data against all of the other data that you're collecting into Log Analytics and run these queries all in the very same place. So for those of you familiar with Application Insights, you can see dependencies is here, events is here, page views, all of the standard data types that you'd expect in Application Insights. But instead of living in the sandbox environment like they used to, they are actually physically getting sent to the same workspace. I'll flip over here to the Application Insights instance that's actually configured to send the data to that workspace. And I'll just very quickly show you that sure enough, here you can see the workspace is CHLA dev, which is, over here where we were. This is CHLA dev that we were querying before. But if I go here, nothing changes. We still have our application map that works just as before. Everything loads. I can press update map components. And if I do that, I'll see my entire application, regardless of where the data is being sent. And I can see here, the standard things we expect from Application Insights, the ability to monitor through Node and through Java and through .NET Core and through all of these other things, get my failures, exceptions, have all of my previous queries that I wrote in Application Insights continue to work, but the data truly be centralized now. So let's go back to over here. Now, of course, I can start with, a pre-populated query. And by the way, we have a ton of example queries here available for you, depending on what you're trying to do. So, we talked about Application Insights. I can look at maybe page view trends. So we're starting to really populate example queries for you to use. But we can also go back and just press logs over here and write our own query. So let's close out of the examples here quickly. And let's say kube events, we'll just say take 100. One of the other new things that I want to show you here, let's actually modify this just a little bit. I'll do a brief summarize, and we'll say summarize count by bin, time generated. We'll say 1 hour, and we'll also break this down by namespace. So let's just see what's generating the most events in our system right now. One of the great new things that we're introducing as part of the announcements that Rahul mentioned to you is a revamped alert creation experience from within Log Analytics. So now we have some data. I can come in here and I can press new alert rule. We used to have this before, but everything going forward, this UI is completely revamped. So you can see, first of all, I get my my query over here that I was working on. That's great. I can look at either the number of rows or the measure. In this case, let's look at the count. The count is pretty consistent. There's a bit of variation there. That's fine. Notice it automatically picked up the 1 hour for me. If I had multiple aggregations, I would also have that show up here. Everything would be picked up. In this case, remember how we specified that this can be split up by the dimension? I can actually come in here and specify the namespace right from within the query configuration. It will automatically pull for me all of the different possible values. Let's look at that Minecraft one. And again, we can go back, look at older history. I can specify the threshold. So here, maybe I want to set this to fire anytime this is over 115, something like that seems reasonable to me. There's also some advanced options here for suppression. I'm not going to go deep into all of this. Definitely encourage all of you to play around with it. We'll create an alert rule here, which is essentially the set of things that happens whenever this alert gets triggered. In this case, I want to select this logic app over here. We'll talk about logic apps in a second here, but logic apps is a way for me to essentially have a workflow that uses one of a ton of different built-in connectors that the logic app team provides for me to actually execute a business workflow, as opposed to doing something very simple like email or SMS or there's a bunch of other things that we do out of the box. We can also create an action group right from here if we wanted, and it would show up back here for us. We'll go into the details. Of course, we'll need to give this alert a name, my new alert. We can start running it now, provide tags, and finally review and create, and everything will be presented here for me. At this point, I can say create, and this alert will be up and running for you. So a very nice little seamless experience, and I can go right back to my query once I'm done with that and continue querying and investigating. So really good little experience. Let's talk about logic apps for a second. There was a great announcement too that hopefully you caught in Rahul's slides. So this is a blank logic apps here. And if we go into our designer, let's just close out of there. And let's just say we want to create something on a recurrence. Let's run this every 3 minutes, sounds good. One of the things here, if we look for log analytics, is a new connector that we've introduced right over here, Azure Monitor logs, run query and list results or run query and visualize results. If I pick this, it will ask me for my subscription that I want to run things against. Let's select that same Contoso one that we had previous. We'll pick a resource group, which is going to be this one. And you'll notice that now we have both the log analytics and application insights data sources right here. Like we said, this is all unified. So something that is now truly unified across the entire surface area, not just in the data being sent, but also things like this logic app being connected. And then after this, I can go in and I can look at, like I said, the hundreds and hundreds of different connectors that logic apps exposes here, and maybe connect with GitHub or connect with, take your pick of any of these other connectors that are available to me. Couple more things I want to show off. First of all, under Network Watcher, we've revamped the experience for our connection monitors. So if I pick one of these, I have one called Demo. Let's pull it up. This is now a much cleaner experience. Everything is right here for me. On this overview pane, I can see my top failing tests, my test groups, configurations, all the different sources and destinations, and I can zoom into any of these. So for those of you who don't know, the connection monitor is a way for me to essentially check the status of my connection, the health of my connection, either between multiple machines or a machine and a public endpoint or something like that. You can see here that from East US to Central US, I'm having issues. I can go in, I can look at a network map of this topology. In this case, there isn't that much there. It's just virtual network peering. But another really clean new experience for you to play around with. And then the final thing I want to show you today is something that we'll be building out more and more here, but something called data collection rules, which today is configured to only work with the next generation Azure Monitor agent that Rahul mentioned. But more and more, you'll see different data sources and different destinations being exposed here. So let's just pick this one here, and I'll just select my own resource group. So let's add some virtual machines. And today, this is limited to virtual machines, but eventually this will encompass all of the different data sources that Azure Monitor provides. We'll pick this virtual machine, but I could pick an entire subscription even if I wanted to. And that's the beauty of this. This is a way for you to define what you want to monitor rather than individual resources. And then you get to specify what types of data you want from those resources. In this case, I have performance counters, Windows events, let's say Windows events, and I can select all of the different levels that I want, go into my destinations. In this case, we can pick a workspace here. Eventually, there will be other destinations supported as well. We can add this data source, have as many data sources as I want, go in and create, and now all of a sudden, everything will be hooked up for me automatically. So definitely start playing around with data collection rules. Like I said, this will be expanded more and more going forward. So this is what I had for you today. And with that, let's get back to Rahul to close us off.
Thanks, Evgeny. I always love watching your demos. So there is a new cloud adoption framework guide that's now available to you that can help you create that hybrid cloud monitoring strategy on how best to use SCOM and Azure Monitor to take advantage of best of both worlds. And for those of you who are coming from SCOM to Azure Monitor, just as a capability mapping, so it becomes easier for you to figure out your activities that you used to do in SCOM, how do they translate into that cloud world or the Azure Monitor world. So if you are using views or views designer in SCOM for visualizations, in Azure Monitor world, they translate into workbooks or dashboards or resource overview pages. Many of those experiences Yevgeny showed in the demo today. If you are using SCOM alerts for responding, you saw how Azure Monitor alerts work today, and that's a fairly rich experience across metrics and logs. For assessment, you used to have management packs in the SCOM world, which used to monitor your servers or all sorts of workloads. In Azure Monitor, we have these out-of-the-box insights, like you saw for containers, for applications, you saw it for networks, there were Key Vault, all sorts of things. For analytics, SCOM had a data warehouse where you could store all of your telemetry. In Azure Monitor, it's a much richer experience with a powerful log analytics platform where you can centrally collect all of your logs, not just your diagnostic logs, but your audit logs, security, networking, management, all sorts of logs, and run queries on top of that. There is also a metrics explorer that can help you analyze your metrics and create highly customized charts that you can then pin on your workbooks or dashboards. For application monitoring, SCOM had the APM module, which in Azure Monitor is the application insights capability or feature that gives you a full-scale enterprise-ready APM capability with failure diagnostics, performance monitoring, usage analytics, availability monitoring, and all the things that you need from APM. So here are all the resources that you can start taking advantage of. You can keep track of all the updates from Azure Monitor. We have our documentation, a bunch of courses and skills-based articles, and even case studies. So with that, thank you all for your time, and looking forward on how you're using Azure Monitor to the best of your requirements.
Thanks all for being here with us today. Take care.